Poker's legendary champions, next generation stars, and tireless ambassadors of the game, sharing their wisdom and guiding your journey to high achievement on the green felt. This is Chasing Poker Greatness with your host, Brad Wilson.
Welcome, my friends, to another episode of the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast. As always, this is your host, the founder of ChasingPokerGreatness.com, Coach Brad Wilson, and today's guest on CPG is a high-stakes cash game beast with over $2 million in live tournament cashes and one of my personal favorite humans in the poker world, Jesse Yaginuma. You may recall Jesse being mentioned in a story recent CPG guest Justin Saliba told about the $5,500 high roller online WSOP Freezout event. That is a mouthful, where in a very strange twist of fate, 3 out of 10 guys in a group chat managed to be the last 3 players remaining in the tournament. They had planned to meet up and play soccer the next day, and when Jesse busted out in 3rd place, he quipped, "You boys better bring your shin pads tomorrow." This, to me, is a pretty typical experience with Jesse. On the green felt, he's about as tenacious and unflappable as they come, while off the felt, he's just a laid-back, hilarious dude that's as cool as a cucumber. In my mind, all of these are very important ingredients in my personal recipe for live poker greatness. It doesn't hurt that he's also one of the most talented poker players I've ever had the good fortune of going to war against. In today's episode with Jesse Yaginuma, he's going to tell you poker stories that are near and dear to his heart, what he's been up to since coming on to CPG almost 2 years ago, how he goes about addressing and plugging weaknesses in his poker game, and much, much more. So now, without any further ado, I bring to you an amazing human being who's a genuine poker talent, the one and only Jesse Yaginuma. Mr. Yaginuma, welcome back to the podcast, sir. How you been, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back.
It's my pleasure. Always a pleasure. I hope to have you back on again and again and again, and as long as you're willing to keep coming on. You know, you're just one of the good human beings in poker that I respect and appreciate, so it's always a pleasure.
I appreciate that. Thanks. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
So the first question in these round 2s is, what have you been up to since the first one? And the first one, to set the timeline, I believe was around like September-ish of like 2019. So it's been a couple years.
It has been a couple years. I was living in LA back when we did our first video. I've since moved to Las Vegas about a year ago, and I've been playing a fair amount of poker out here. You know, I've been kind of trying to ride out COVID like everybody else, but poker action's been pretty good in general, it seems like. So that's basically it.
Why the move from LA to Vegas? Like, because I mean, for me, like, Vegas is less expensive, so like I guess that's a plus. Like, the cost of living is lower, but the LA weather, man. I mean, the weather it's so fucking nice.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong about that. No, I love Southern California. I like living there. It just kind of made sense at the time. Everything in LA was shut down, including poker and the casinos and everything at the time. My lease was running out, and I decided to come check out Vegas for a bit. Originally, I just got an Airbnb for like a month just to play some cards and hang out. And then I decided to just move out here for a little while and just play poker, mainly because LA was shut down, but also to change the scenery and I'm still here.
Any thoughts of you could have grinded on the streets of Bovado or Ignition, put in some volume there, maybe played the big tournaments on ACR?
For a little while. In LA, during the shutdown at first, I was playing at all 9 tournaments. Some of the apps, a lot of people are doing, but that wasn't really my speed. I didn't really like the apps. I was always a little sketched out by them.
Rightfully so.
I know some people have had great games on there, but that wasn't really my thing. And I kind of like playing live in general more than online overall anyway. So I figured I'd give this a shot.
I think the apps are like high risk, high reward. and you can get in some like really good games, but like you can also you could be exposed to lots of risk even if you're like a favorite in the game. You know, you can get cheated, you can get colluded, you can not get paid. Like there are just so many things that can go wrong.
Absolutely, yeah. And I did play on them for a little bit. No big stakes or anything like that. But I don't know, just even if it is a legit game, just in the back of my head, having like, oh, this guy could be cheating me this wasn't really my thing.
Yeah, I totally understand. I navigated those waters for a while. I got super used for like 2 months on one of the apps at one point, which was actually it was kind of reassuring when I realized that I got super used. But that's a different story for a different day, because like just a gang of like 70/3s were just beating my fucking brains in day after day, and I was just like, I don't understand. Like, do I not know how to play poker anymore? Like, so when I realized they were super using, I was like, oh, whew, that's a relief. I still remember how to play poker. That's nice.
Yeah, I'm sure there's lots of stories out there like similar to yours.
I'm sure. So right now you're living in Vegas. You've had some success in some of the bigger tournaments lately. You want to talk about that?
I've been pretty fortunate recently to make some runs in a few different events. I got 11th place in the Win 10K, the big tournament they had over there, which was always bittersweet, but definitely can't complain. It was a lot of fun.
How much did you? What was 11th?
11th paid like just over 170,000. So
that's an okay day. Okay day.
Definitely not the worst 11th place I've ever had, but yeah.
It's always like you said. It's always so bittersweet, right? Like, and I think that. Have you had like a major NTT victory yet in your career?
I've won a few tournaments like live, but nothing big. A couple of medium-sized events.
What do you mean by big?
Like my biggest first place I had was, I think I won like one of the quote unquote high rollers at one of the circuit events for like 100K. I've gotten third place in the WPT before, which was my biggest previous score. But yeah, no immense victories, I would say.
What's going to move the needle for you? Like when you finally snap, what's going to make the great Jesse Yaginuma be like, holy shit, that was fucking awesome?
I don't really have any specific goals, to win like a bracelet or a title or anything like that. That's kind of
like $1 million day. $1 million day. That's you're going to feel that, right? Like that's when it gets the pulse going.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even anytime you're deep in a big tournament with like a first place, like the win was like 2 million to first, like you're definitely gonna feel some adrenaline, some nerves. Yeah, you're gonna get you excited a little bit for sure.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time. I think like as long as you're firing and operating at a high level, like I know you are, it's going to happen one day.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Let's imagine that you've got a greatest hits collection for the best stories you've accumulated in your career playing cards. Tell me a story that's on your greatest hits collection.
My greatest hits collection playing cards. I feel like all these crazy stories come from like these private games and home games that I don't really play. So I feel like my greatest hits might not be quite as exciting as some others. But
you remember that day that everybody got drunk at Commerce and was playing like PLO flips, and like we tried to go play 1-2. That was and like
I do remember that. Yeah, it probably happened on a couple of different occasions.
Yeah, like for me, it only happened the one, but I do remember like playing the 1-2 game at Commerce with like Garrett, you, I think Mike Katz was in there too. I can't remember everybody that was in there, but like,
right.
Yeah, there was like just 1,000 chips in the pot, and a rec that sat down with us to play basically got their kings cracked and made us quit playing. It was yeah, it was a fun time.
Definitely had some good times back then.
Yeah, come on, man. You gotta have some good stories, like memorable events, things that just stand out as like, yeah, that was a fun experience.
That was a fun experience. See. Final table of a private charity tournament one time. I won't mention the names, but there were a couple, it was like some well-known athletes and actors, comedians, and we're at the final table. Ended up making heads up with one of the actors, and they were just like they were passing around like a joint and all this stuff, the final table, like while like talking shit to each other. It was just pretty memorable time. Yeah.
Nice. Did we take it down?
We actually lost. No, we lost to a pretty well known guy. But he was a class act. It was a lot of fun.
How'd you get invited to private charity tournament with like a bunch of celebrities?
Just through another poker player. I guess they were just kind of looking for people to play that. There was like they had some cash games going on too, but I guess they're just looking for different people to come play. I don't know. I'm not sure why they specifically wanted random poker players to come, but I guess just some people to fill the seats.
Nice. Did you play the cash games at all?
I didn't that day, but I know a lot of people did. Seemed like they were pretty good action, but yeah, not personally. I would have probably if I had busted a tournament earlier, but I somehow made it to heads up. So.
Of course. Speaking of cash games, you mentioned your tournament results. How are the cash game streets treating you? What stakes you playing? What games are you playing these days?
I've been playing, so I don't remember exactly what I was told you last time, but I've been playing almost all PLO for cash games last several years. So I play mostly at the Aria because that's generally where the PLO games are out here. It's kind of hit or miss out here. There's like a 5-10 PLO basically that runs every day, and then the bigger games will run kind of randomly. Like sometimes they'll run for like a week or two straight, and then sometimes they won't run for a month, which seems like the case now. It's kind of slow right now, but yeah, during like the big tournaments and everything is always pretty good action, and so I've been pretty much doing that.
Are these games uncapped?
Anything above 510 is uncapped. The 510 is like a $2,000 max, and then anything 25 or higher is uncapped. Yeah.
Nice. So the 25, how much do you typically buy in for? Like how many big blinds would you say if you play like the 25 that's uncapped?
I usually buy in for about 5,000. So, between like, and straddled like half the time also. So, between 100 or 200 big blinds, and kind of go from there, see what's going on. If there's like a, action player with a lot of money, sometimes I'll add on to try and, get deeper with him, but it kind of depends what's happening.
Yeah. Why PLO instead of Hold'em?
At the time, I just wanted to do something different. I was playing a lot of Hold'em. I still play a lot of Hold'em in tournaments and everything, but I wanted to try a different game, try and challenge myself a little differently, think about the game differently. Like I played No Limit for probably the first 10 years of my career, and No Limit is still fascinating, and I have a ton to learn. Don't get me wrong, but I just wanted to try to play like a little bit different from poker and think about it a little differently, and it was a lot of fun. It's a little bit more gambly, it's a little bit more action in some senses. So yeah, I just kind of enjoyed it and stuck with it.
What do you mean by that? In some senses,
well, people get the ideas sometimes. I feel like, well, maybe people that don't play PLO as much, it's like this crazy game where like people are like all in all the time, and it's sometimes like that, but it's definitely not always like that. Like in PLO, you kind of have to play your equity a lot more than No Limit, whereas No Limit, you can kind of, if you want to go crazy in a hand, you can kind of go crazy and get away with it from time to time. In PLO, like it's just kind of suicide to just have like run like no equity bluffs and stuff like that in general. So in that sense, actually, I was talking with a friend recently, and we were saying how No Limit makes for a better televised game because people can do all these crazy things and people are like deep stacked and making crazy bluffs, whereas PLO, everyone just kind of they get all in, and it's good action for people that are playing, but for people that are watching, like watching people get all in for 50 big blinds in a PLO game is not that interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting, like when they're very deep and basically I think like 6-figure plus pots. It's also, I think, harder for the casual watcher to really discern all the things that are going on in PLO.
Yeah, for sure. It's a little bit harder to understand. I mean, less people just play PLO in general, so it's definitely for TV. I think No Limit is definitely the more interesting game for now. But
what's something you think would be helpful for somebody transitioning to PLO from No Limit Hold'em?
Well, there's obviously tons of material out there to learn if that's the route you want to take. There's videos and stuff like that. But if you want like one
Google
tip,
it, motherfucker.
Yeah, no. If there's like one thing to learn, I don't know. I guess just don't overvalue like Hold'em hands. Like just because you have bottom two pairs, doesn't mean just learn the hand values. Basically, I would say, yeah. And also, I guess in addition, people just kind of play too many hands in PLO. That's the like number one thing that I feel like new players just leak on is they feel like they can get away with playing like a lot of marginal hands, and you really just in a lot of spots you're just dominated by bigger rundowns, bigger flush draws, bigger sets, stuff like that. So it's harder to get away with than people realize.
Yeah. And it's also like, the Jack 6-5 tray with like a suited Jack can like look appealing from under the gun. Whereas like the Jack tray off in Hold'em just has very limited appeal even to like whoever you are playing the game, right?
Even the loosest player folds the Jack 3 off under a gun, no limit, but yeah, they'll play it and feel it.
Yeah, exactly. Personally, like, and this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, and it kind of why I wanted to go a little bit deep into PLO is like, I think within the next year, I'm probably going to go full force into PLO for a lot of the same reasons that I think you made the transition. But I've actually like done a fair amount of research because that's just sort of how my nerdy self operates is like, I've read the Tom Chambers book, kind of. I mean, it's not a book that like you functionally read. It's like just billions of different numbers and like different equities against hand versus hand and like understanding how the equities work and structuring strategies in that way. But like, it's just, I think that when I got into poker, it was such a fun game to learn. I was just, I guess I'm the type of person that's always been more in love with like the strategic aspect of the game. And man, playing one game for 16 years, it's like, it's time to broaden the horizons a little bit. Try to find some different waters to swim in for a little while.
And I think that's correct. But you know what? It's just interesting you say that. So that's one of the main reasons I started to play Omaha. Probably like almost 5 years ago now, mainly. But actually recently I've kind of rekindled my interest and passion for No Limit Hold'em, especially in tournaments. But there's so much more
What
information.
led to
now.
that,
Like,
Jesse?
no, there's just so much more. There's so much like you can learn now, and there's different. Obviously there's solvers and stuff like that. But just learning different strategies, No Limit has actually rekindled a lot of my passion to like study poker a little bit and try and get better. And and I mean, obviously I've been running pretty good in these tournaments. Also, you can't do that without running good. But I feel like just learning new strategies and No Limit Hold'em has also helped my game and interested me more. So it's been pretty good.
You're actually onto something there too, because like a year ago, I started investing a lot of time into understanding how like massive amounts of data work and how to analyze them thoroughly and properly and sort of get a zoomed out approach as to like how people are actually playing cards, both like regs and fish. And that was what was the most fun for me, which is a little bit weird, was like just cracking some of my previously held beliefs that I thought to be true that were based on like anecdotal evidence, but then realizing that like they weren't actually true, and just sort of breaking these like assumptions I had made over the course of my career. That was actually fun because it was like, wow, like it introduced this new layer of depth to this game that I was just totally unaware of, and it just made the study and learning of the game much more fun.
No, I absolutely agree. It makes it enjoyable. And also just having like a data-based answer to some situations and hands, for example, actually also helps me in certain spots, I feel like. Whereas back in the day, like, 10 before pre-solver, pre-anything, if I made like a crazy bluff or like a big call and I was wrong, I would just sit there and second guess myself like for, hours, days even, like, what am I doing? Like, but now that you can literally like plug the hand in and find that you're like, oh, it actually wasn't that bad, or oh, you're an idiot, one or the other. Either way, at least you kind of know. At least you kind of have an answer to what you're doing, which at least in my mind helps me like stop second guessing myself all the time, I guess.
Yeah, that targeted feedback is pretty important because the feedback mechanism in poker is so faulty. Like, you can second guess yourself, you can wonder, and then like you just plug it in using like Pio, using a solver, looking at some data reads, and you're like, oh, this was actually good. So what the fuck's my problem? Let's move on. So when you began your poker career, Who would you say was your biggest influence into pursuing the life of a poker professional?
I had when I first started playing, like I wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna become a poker professional. It was more like a hobby, and I was playing for fun.
Sure.
And it kind of feel like it just naturally progressed into kind of where I'm at now. Like I just kind of kept playing and just kept putting off getting a job. And kind of,
Well, who got you into the game? Like, who is influential in like igniting a passion for learning and growing?
Mostly my friends, I would say. I just started playing with some friends in college, for like $5. And then I moved up to like 1-2 no limit, and then met some more people there that were playing. So yeah, a lot of the guys I started playing house games with in Maryland were pretty influential, I would say. Like some of them are playing bigger, and I was like, oh, well, I want to play those stakes also. And now kind of go up, and some of them are still playing poker, some of them aren't. But yeah, I would say like the community in Maryland was very influential in getting my start.
Awesome, man. What would you say is your poker superpower? Like, what's a thing that you just know you do very, very well?
Oh man, I'm definitely like not the best in terms of like math or analyzing hand. Like, I'm not the best in like I haven't studied the most, but I'm pretty good at staying even keeled. Like I don't try not to tilt. I mean, everyone's guilty to it to some extent, but yeah, I kind of just play every hand as it is. Like if I lose a bad hand, I usually pretty good about getting over it pretty quickly. So
I can attest.
I don't know if I have a superpower, but I would say
Well, that's a superpower, right? Like being able to recover very quickly is a superpower. Like it allows you to put in more volume, play more hours, learn more, grow more, make more money. Anything that helps facilitate that is kind of a superpower.
It's definitely a very important skill to have in poker.
Yeah, and in our first conversation, I can attest that like Jesse just unflappable. Like outwardly unflappable. I have no idea what's happening inner, but like outwardly just like, oh, okay. Speaking of, like I remember you remember the hand at Commerce? We played against each other. It was like we had 10K back, and I have a question about one of your favorite poker hands, but this one just kind of like popped in my head. I had kings, you had aces, and the board ran out straight, and we ended up chopping it. It was like I remember that hand. It was just really funny because like I think the river ran out like a backdoor flush, and like you checked your cards to see if you had like the ace of spades, and then jammed, and then I checked my cards to see if I had the king of spades, which I did, and I called, and we just like chopped it up. And I think in the like that 1 hour, I'd gotten kings versus aces twice, and like one time I won. I ran it twice and won both of them, and then the other time I chopped with you in like a big pot. So anyway, that situation, that situation sticks in my memory as being funny.
I do remember that actually. Yeah, now that you bring it up.
Yeah,
that was a long time ago.
It was a long, man. We're getting old. Like this was probably 8 years ago or so. Like that's kind of crazy to me. It feels like those days were not that long ago.
It's wild.
All right. So tell me the story of your favorite poker session ever, like, or one that just stands out in your mind.
Favorite poker session ever? I used to play some really long sessions. It was like when I first started playing like a little bit bigger Commerce. Remember I played like probably 40 hours straight or something with like, it was like a 20-40 no limit. I think Garrett had just moved to LA too, and he was in the game. It's not like a specific hand stands out, but yeah, I remember like just playing like for almost 2 days straight. The game was obviously very good. I mean, otherwise I wouldn't have stayed. But yeah, I was just like, that was pretty big for me, definitely at the time. And I just remember like swinging amounts of money and just sitting there thinking like, wow, like this is way more money than I ever thought I would gamble with. And I was just swinging, Garrett like bet like, it was a hand where he bet like, he 3-bet me and then somehow made a boat with like 7-3 or something. And they bet like $5,000 in the river. And I like called. And I was like, wow. For some reason that like stuff like that sticks out of me a little bit.
Yeah. Well, getting through by the 7-3, so when I was staying at Commerce, I know Garrett and DGAF were playing heads up, and like I had like taken a sleep aid, and I would make my like trek to like the little convenience store in Commerce to like grab like a snack to take back to my room. And like during my trek, like I went through the high stakes room, and I remember like DGAF playing Garrett heads up, and like just a massive pot developing, and like Garrett showing down like King 7, which was like 2 pair, and Billy just kind of looking at the board, like squinting his eyes, like that's a $2,200 hand. That's a $2,200 pre-flop hand. Like just mucking his cards.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, sounds about right. During that session, like how do you manage to play for 40 hours straight? Because like I would just kind of collapse in a heap and die. I think my longest sessions probably in the order of like 24 or 25 hours. And I was certainly delirious and playing it like a D- game.
It's a very good question. I don't even know how I did it myself back then. I haven't played anywhere near that long anytime recently. I'd say my longest session in the last 5 years is probably like, 10 hours or something. But I don't know, back then, and I was obviously younger, and I was like, I guess a little bit more motivated to play, but the game was good. Yeah, I don't really know exactly how it happened, but probably lots of caffeine, and just kind of powered through.
Yeah, some Vietnamese coffee at the Commerce.
Oh, yeah. Definitely several Vietnamese coffees.
Whew. I didn't realize I didn't realize the effect that would have. And like the first time I drank one, and holy shit, it was like liquid cocaine. It was insane.
Yeah, those are loaded, just pure caffeine and sugar.
Yeah. So what about a least favorite poker session? One that you just stands out as like soul crushing, devastating, not a good time.
Definitely had a few of those. I've always been pretty good at like cutting myself off so I don't like lose like an amount where like it would be like soul crushing. But definitely had a few where like I was like took a shot at like a bigger PLO game, like kind of when I was still first learning PLO. I think we were playing like 50, 100 or 100, 200 or something. Like, I was buying in short, I was taking a shot. I was just buying for like 5,000, lose it. Like I just lost like 4 bullets in a row, and then finally ran up my last bullet where I was almost even. And then I just got like middle set versus top set and just got stacked. And I was like, okay. So there was a couple like that, but I usually kind of just call it quits after a certain point.
Taking a shot like that at like 50, 100 or 100, 200 is you're like learning PLO. I mean, what leads to these shot taking events, Jesse?
Usually I just try and play if the game is good. And this was several years ago. I think now it's a little bit different, but I would just kind of usually play if the game was action and it was good, and I would just kind of give myself like an amount where I was willing to gamble with, and if you lose it, it's unfortunate, but you play, you got it in a good spot. Well, hopefully you did at least. So.
except for the middle set versus top set, that's not a good spot.
Probably not a good spot.
When you think of nemesis in your poker career, who's the first person that comes to mind? And it doesn't necessarily have to be like, basically just somebody that like tends to get the better of you no matter kind of what you do.
Like there are definitely people that like feel like hold over you in certain spots, especially like in live poker. I can't think of an exact example right now, but in live poker, you see just so few hands and your sample size is so small that sometimes you feel like every time you play with a guy, he beats you in every hand, whereas it's possible he just had a very good hand each time, and but sometimes it feels like you're getting owned for sure. Can't think of like a specific example off the top of my head, but if I do, I'll mention it.
Yeah, you can text me later. When you think of pots won, what's the first one that comes to mind?
Exactly sure. I haven't played like a ton of like huge cash. I definitely won like maybe the biggest cash game pot I won.
Wait. We just talked about like losing a 40K pot playing 100, 200 PLOs. So like,
oh no, it wasn't like 40K. It was more like it was closer to like 25, 30 maybe. Maybe I wasn't that close to even. I did win like maybe a 40K pot one time. Maybe it was 35 with pocket kings in like this crazy hand where like I think it was a commerce. Yeah, it was a commerce, and it was like 50, 100. It was like a 3-way all in with kings, and some guy had like middle pair and some guy had top pair, and a guy actually turned 2 pair, but then I counterfeited on the river, and was an exciting hand. That was one of the bigger cash game pots I've ever won. In tournaments, I would say hand the most exciting hand. Huh? I don't know. I guess I haven't won like a huge tournament yet, so I don't have like a specific hand. But hopefully at some point soon.
The decision to enter a hand is fundamental to poker strategy. Too tight, and they know what you have. Too loose, and you're easy to run over. Pre-flop bootcamp from Chasing Poker Greatness is a comprehensive guide to locking down your pre-flop game and creating true range advantage. 8 days of guided training, over 60 optimal ranges, and access to a dedicated community of players that will push your pre-flop game from a place of weakness to your greatest strength. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com/bootcamp. Available now.
John, I wanted to ask you why you decided to invest into pre-flop bootcamp.
Everything that you had done with me to that point, or I had heard you do, had impressed me. I loved the podcast. I accidentally ended up in the Poker Power Hour and loved that. And then I took coaching, and then you recommended the boot camp. And at first I didn't think it was, something that would be that valuable. But I was like, everything else has been amazing. So I signed up, and then it just blew me away.
And what about boot camp blew you away?
Like, it started off slow. Like, I'm learning these ranges, and I'm not even understanding what you're talking about. And then all of a sudden, as I start to understand what we're doing with the 3 bets, the 4 bets, and all of a sudden it just kind of hit me. And I was like, oh my God, how do I not know this stuff? This is amazing. The more I studied them, I started to understand why they were constructed sometimes. Like, I'd be like, that's why that's like that. And that would lead to more revelations and just a better understanding of poker in general.
Do you have any interesting takeaways from your boot camp experience?
The most interesting thing about the boot camp, it's a pre-flop boot camp, but I feel like it's done as much for my post game as it did for my pre-game, just because I'm not in as many awkward and bad situations as I found myself in. When we were doing coaching before the boot camp, we couldn't get through 10, 15 minutes of tape without finding mistake after mistake. And then once we did the boot camp, it solved problems on the back end as well.
I know you've studied for 1,000 hours this year. How do you think boot camp compares to your other poker study?
Oh, it's crazy. The boot camp is probably the most important thing I've done all year out of everything. I would give anything to go back and to know that stuff 10 years ago. I can't imagine how successful I'd be right now if I had known that stuff. And I thought the boot camp was so valuable that I literally insisted you take more money from me and paid you more for the boot camp because I was blown away. I just thought the price was too cheap. And it's changed my game in ways that I can't even explain to you.
If you'd like to join the next round of pre-flop bootcamp, which starts on the last Saturday of every month, head to chasingpokergreatness.com/bootcamp to lock up your spot. One more time, that's chasingpokergreatness.com/bootcamp. Let's ask the opposite question now. When you think of pots lost, what pots come to mind?
Pots lost. Well, the most recent one that comes to mind is my bust out hand from the win. Got in pocket queens against, I don't want to tell a bad piece story, but I got in pocket queens against pocket tens, and he 4-flushed me to bust that tournament. So that's the most memorable recent hand I lost. Otherwise, I'm definitely, the pots lost do feel more memorable. I busted a lot of hand tournaments, like, I don't know, like near a big final table where it would have been nice, but I try to keep I actually don't remember like as many hands as some other people do, I feel like.
Well, I think at some point, like, we don't commit all the hands to memory because, like, at some point it's just not as useful as it used to be. It's kind of like diminishing returns. At least that's been my experience in poker.
Yeah, I think it's fairly important to have a short-term memory in some regards. I mean, you want to you want to remember the important things, but you can't just dwell on the on the negatives.
Sure. And I think like with poker, again, like I think the way that I'm constructed, like the strategy aspect was like everything to me in the beginning. And so like every little data point, every detail was like obsessed over, like off the felt afterwards. And then at some point it was just like, okay, we played some hands and I don't know that there's a lot to take away and let's just move on with our lives.
Fine line between learning, obviously, and like learning from the sessions you played, and also not dwelling on all the swings from poker, because it's pretty easy to get caught up in the up or down swings.
What's the major benefit, or do you have any tactics to have a short memory?
I think it's important to have a balance. You have to have other things to do once you leave the poker table. And I admittedly have not always been good with that, but try to get out there and play some sports, playing some tennis, golf, pickleball have been pretty popular recently. Or just games. I've been playing like chess recently, like a game where if you lose that, you're not going to lose a bunch of money. It's always nice to have.
All the games.
I'm terrible at chess, but I enjoy playing it.
Justin Saliba just came on the podcast and was telling me about, how y'all were in like a thread, and it was like, what, 3 of the 10 people in the thread were like, it was 3-handed between 3 of you in the group text.
Yeah, that was actually very funny. Yeah, with we were all planning on playing indoor soccer the next day in Vegas, and with like 15 people left, like we were the 3 of us were in a chat, and then somehow we got 3-handed, and and it was pretty interesting. And Justin ended up winning, so congrats to him. And then we all ended up playing soccer the next morning, which was a lot of fun actually. But yeah, pretty crazy how it worked out.
Yeah, he told me about your text saying to bring your shin pads. Bring your shin pads tomorrow. But I guess third's better than fourth or any other place. So
no, definitely happy with it. It's a fun tournament.
Close to get a bracelet. I know that there's a lot of talk right now about like the value of the bracelets, etc. Like, still, how do you think you would have felt getting a bracelet for like the online WSOP companion to the live WSOP?
I thought would have been cool, but I never really thought too much about it. I've never really been like chasing bracelets or stuff like that. I mean, if I win one, great. I'd be happy to have it, and I'd be proud to own one. But I haven't really like thought too much about the value of bracelets or diminishing value recently. And obviously, they're giving out, what was it, like 150 bracelets or something this year. I mean, it is what it is. I don't think it's like a bad thing. It's good for poker to generate interest, but yeah, I've never been one to like chase a bracelet per se.
So if you're not chasing bracelets, what is the fuel that makes you want to get up and compete in poker tournaments on a regular basis?
I mean, obviously, I think the action is good right now. It's my living, or that work is like part of it. But also, I think the competition itself is the main fuel. I enjoy like trying to outwit each other and trying to take what I learned into actual action on the felt, and see if I'm like challenge myself in that way. So of course the money is important, but the competition itself is the main fuel. Besides that, I would say for sure.
It must be, right? Like the money, the prestige aspect, the people that like, just chase that component of like what they imagine, poker greatness to be. I think the shelf life of them being a pro or sustaining being a poker professional over the long term, they're just going to get burned out. Like it's not enough of a driver to motivate somebody day in and day out. Just like the pursuit of money. And I think that like this really manifests in like the live cash game streets when you have these guys that are like, quote unquote pros, but like sort of lower level pros that are just trying to grind out an hourly every day and are there just because they feel like they have to be there. Like never, ever are these human beings like super pumped and happy about playing poker.
No, absolutely. It can wear on you very fast for sure. And if you're not enjoying it, if you're not challenging yourself, and if you're not trying to improve and and enjoying the competition, then like going there every day to grind down hourly is not a fun way to really go about life, I would say. I mean, there's a time and place for that, and I enjoy playing cash games also, but anytime I try and force myself to play when I don't really want to, or I don't, I'm not in the right mindset, then I never play good. I don't enjoy it, and it's just not the best way to play poker.
I think every time that I've gone about it, it's just ended in regret. Like, just regret all around of like, why did I spend my day doing this? I did not want to do this. Like, now I'm playing like shit, and then just spirals down from there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, just emotional control and mindset is just as important as being good at the cards.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it segues into, right? Like, once you have a high technical understanding, like the next part is like performance. You've got to actually perform, and at a high level, day in and day out, hour in and hour out. And going back, by the way, to something that you said earlier that I kind of skipped over, you mentioned like falling more in love with Hold'em because of the study tools available, which begs the question of like, how do you go about studying poker these days?
It's a mix. Talk hands with some friends that are very good. I don't do the solvers a ton, but I do some hands here and there. I think they definitely are important and have a time and place. I watch some instructional videos from time to time, but yeah, mostly I would say there's so much information out there that you can kind of there's no specific way to go about it. You can kind of find your own path. I know some people, like the best poker players, some of them like grind solvers for hours and hours a day, and they're for sure probably the best in the world now. And maybe I'd be better if I did that, but I haven't really. That's not the route that I've gone, I would say. But I still like understand how like they work, and I kind of like put a decent range of like. Maybe I'm not explaining it very well, but like I know like roughly what the solver likes in a lot of different spots. And if I have a specific question, I'll put it in. Like there was a hand recently where I made like a big bluff. I was like, oh, I thought it was okay, and then I had my friend run it through the solver, and it was like, oh, it's terrible. And I was like, okay, great. So I learned from my mistakes like that.
You mentioned, why do you think solvers don't resonate with you in the way that they do other people? Like, because you and I are similar in that way.
Well, I don't think it's that it doesn't resonate. I think they're extremely important. They're
well, it doesn't get your goat, right? Like it doesn't like suck you in.
Right. Well, probably if I was playing these high roller tournaments against some of the best 50 players in the world all the time, then I would just sit down and grind it a ton because they're all playing extremely balanced and extremely well. In this cash games and tournaments that I play, you come across a wide variety of players. Some very good, some recreational, and everywhere in between. So I think having like a good understanding of what the solver likes is important, but I don't need to plug in every single specific spot because I'm playing against like competition where maybe playing the solver optimal way isn't the best exploitable way against some other people. But it's still important to know what it likes when you're playing against good players, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that like GTO and exploitative poker, they're two sides of the same coin, and that like if you were to node lock a fish's strategy, then like the output on the solver would probably mirror a lot of the exploitative strategies that you deploy, just because like, oh, if villains are folding 80% here on the river and like they're just capped, then like, yeah, the solver is going to be like, let's freaking roll, buddy. Like, let's just bluff our asses off with most of our range,
Yeah, for sure. And so yeah, it's always a little bit of a guessing game trying to figure out what your opponent's doing. But I feel like after playing for 15 years, it's give it an educated guess and see what happens.
Well, I mean, it's a game of people, right? That's the ultimate. That's what makes poker so fun and has always made poker so fun. Like you said, we're trying to outwit and be more clever than one another and find edges, and like that aspect of navigating the psychological and the tactical is just, to me, what makes the game fun and engaging, even after all this time.
It's the most interesting part, and if it wasn't for the competition, probably moved on to something else.
What would you consider a weakness in your poker game? And then what steps have you taken to address said weakness?
Weakness in my game. For a while, I was playing like too far on the exploitative spectrum, I would say. I came up playing more live than online, so I didn't, like I was like on the polar opposite of like GTO and solvers. Like I was playing like purely exploitatively against like specific opponents and like just making like drastic assumptions. And that I've tried pretty hard to fix. And it's definitely taking some time, but like studying and stuff has helped with that. I would like be severely under bluffing in certain spots or like, and just stuff like that. So yeah, I've tried to fix that and become more balanced. And I think I have a long way to go, but that's definitely one of the things I've tried to fix.
We all have long ways to go, sir. It's always we can always do a better job. What's a common assumption that people make about their poker journey that you think they should spend some more time thinking about?
I think people understand that there is variance, but they kind of underestimate the amount of variance you can have, especially if you're playing a lot of live poker. You can go years and years and years, especially if you're playing tournaments without coming anywhere close to realizing your expectations. So yeah, like I've ran pretty good like during COVID and everything, but before, like I had several years before that where that's like it's a bumpy road, and I think you have to be ready for that, and a lot of people, that's why a lot of people end up quitting poker or coming and going, because variance just gets to them, and that's that.
How do you go about maintaining your confidence levels when you're going along one of these bumpy roads?
It's difficult. It's easy to start doubting yourself and start wondering what you're doing with your life when you're losing at poker and busting every tournament all the time. But I think it helps if you are studying and putting in the work, and if you're like discussing with friends and stuff like that. Like as long as it helps when you know that you're making the right plays. If you're as long as you can like compartmentalize the fact that I got unlucky, it's okay, it's part of the game, then I think you can keep going about it. But human nature wise, when you keep getting beat down over and over, is just very difficult to handle.
Yeah, it takes a psychological toll. I like what you said there about just keep doing the right things. And I think that like you have to take self-responsibility in your journey and like not be so quick to blame variance on all of the things that are going wrong, and sort of take responsibility in investigating these spots and understanding like, am I actually making the right decisions here? Am I actually growing? Am I actually getting better at this game on a daily basis? And I think that like a lot of people, if they're honest with themselves when they're going through something like that, they're probably not actively trying to improve on a regular basis. They're probably just, in a downward spiral. And it's just very important to always keep your eye on the prize. And, in my opinion, the prize is just always trying to be the best version of yourself as you can possibly be when you're at the poker table.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's the whole reason poker exists, is because, most people blame their losing on random variance and luck and stuff like that. No, I mean, there's some exceptions. Like some people just purely come to gamble, but most people don't go to the card room expecting like, oh, I'm going to lose 5 big blinds an hour today. They think they're winning. If they go home and lose, they blame it on variance. They blame it on bad luck, whatever they can, unlucky dealer, I've seen that one a lot. So.
Yeah. Let's watch the cards. Give us a new setup. This dealer sucks. A lot of times, some prophecies can be self-fulfilling. I've had private coaching students that have been like, I just keep running, I just keep getting cooler at every session. I'm just cooler. And then it's like, oh, well, like you're c-betting like 90% pot. And then like, like you're just funneling in like all the strongest hands every time, to where like only a better hand will call you down or put money into the pot. And it's like, yeah, of course you're getting cooler. You're like manifesting these events. And so like, even when you think that you're getting coolered in poker over and over, again, there's some like self-responsibility component here in like, am I screwing my strategy up in such a way that like I'm running into the nuts every time because like I'm playing my hand in such a way that the nuts is the only hand that's going to give me action.
Absolutely. And being honest with yourself in poker and in life is one of the most difficult things to do, honestly.
And what do you mean by being honest with yourself? Like for you, what does that look like internally?
I think like the human mind just well not I think like I've read that the human mind basically has like a defense mechanism where like if something bad happens, they like find a reason to like kind of convince yourself it's not your fault. So if you lose in poker, oh, it's somebody else's fault. If you something if like relationship goes bad, oh this is because of this, and like instead of blaming yourself, it has a defense mechanism to find a reason so you don't feel bad about yourself, and so that translates to poker. If you lose, you're like, oh, I got unlucky, or like, oh, I keep getting cooler over and over, but you forget the other, you know, thousands of hands you played where like you made like a small mistake here, a small mistake there, and you just start blaming the variance. So yeah, it's difficult to be honest with yourself, but yeah, like you said, it's very important to do that if you're trying to succeed.
Yeah, and I think like one thing that kind of cuts through the bias of the individual is like getting outside feedback from trusted sources, whether that be through high level poker playing friends, a community, a private coach, just somebody that's able to see what you're doing and look at it, more objectively and with less bias than you yourself have. I think that's another route people can take if they're just unsure.
Yeah, absolutely. Having like another set of eyes on a situation, and definitely in poker is invaluable.
Have you made any purchases in the last year that have been impactful to your poker game? Supplements, training, apps?
I have been taking just trying to be healthier. I've been exercising more and eating better. Not really a purchase, but yeah, it's like a lifestyle change that I've tried to make. I mean, it's been proven repeatedly that just exercising and being healthier helps you think, helps you operate better, helps your mood, helps your critical thinking. So that's helped. I haven't really bought anything per se, but yeah, that would be a change, I suppose.
What does training look like to you? How many days a week? What's the activity level look like?
Usually go to the gym by about an hour a day, like 6 days a week, for like the last 4 months or so. I put on a few COVID pounds, like a lot of people did, I'm sure, and I decided that I wanted to make a change to that. So I decided. So I've been exercising and playing some sports a lot more recently.
Any results cognitively after these 4 months, like more stamina at the poker table, higher cognitive ability in like navigating your thought process, anything like that you can put your finger on?
Yeah, I mean, just the natural sense, like just a general sense, I feel better. I feel like I'm thinking clearer. My focus is a little bit longer. A little bit less scatterbrained. So yeah, I definitely think it's helped in that sense. I've more like if you're playing like a 12-hour tournament day, I have a little bit more energy towards the end of the day. So yeah, I think it's definitely helped.
What are some things you wish you said no to more often?
No, too. I've been trying to cut back. Well, I guess since I started working out, like I've been cutting back a little bit of alcohol. I stopped drinking. Like I was drinking like a few too many beers here and there. So I've been cutting back on stuff like that. I mean, nothing too crazy. Like I still have a drink here and there, but that's something I probably should have said no to a little bit longer ago.
We should have said no to, man. You're a pusher. You're one of the people pushing me to drink more at Commerce.
No. It's fine. It's fine as long as it's like the recreation, like a safe and fun sense. But it's easy to go over the line sometimes, I guess.
For sure. And on the opposite side of that, like what are some things that you wish you had said yes to more often in your poker career?
Not my poker career, but I've actually just been trying to say yes to like more things in general recently. Like if anybody like has like an event or like a trip or something, like I've been just trying to just say yes and try to get as many experiences as possible. Maybe partly because like for a while in COVID, no one could do anything, but also, maybe I'm just getting a little bit older and I don't want to just sit around and make excuses for not doing things. Even if I go do something I don't like it, like it's better than just doing nothing. So I've been trying to say yes to more experiences, I guess.
Yeah, we're getting older. We're realizing that like, time is finite. We're only here for so long, and so we need to like actually do some shit because like it's really easy to just sort of sit around and watch the years kind of fly by.
just goes faster every year.
What's a cool thing you've said yes to recently?
I just got back from a East Coast trip with a high school buddy that I hadn't seen in a couple of years, like definitely hadn't seen through COVID. And then we went like, we had a few friends and got a beach house for like a week. So that was a lot of fun. Saw my parents while I was back there. Like I gave my parents a hug for the first time in like, over a year. So all that was pretty cool. Got some snowboarding trips planned this winter. Maybe trying to go to we'll see with the COVID restrictions and everything, but trying to go to some countries like I've never been to, Austria, maybe Switzerland. So hopefully those work out. We'll see what happens. But yeah, just trying to get some new experiences.
Awesome, man. I think that like getting new experiences is probably one of the major reasons why a lot of us got into poker in the first place. Like traveling around, seeing different places, just experiencing sights and sounds and just all kinds of different environments.
I think so, man. Definitely the freedom to do all that stuff is one of the major attractions of our lifestyle.
Yeah, the freedom, and then like a lot of times we kind of forget about the freedom, and we're like that's where we end up being like, I need to go do some shit. I need to get out into the world.
So easy to forget. It's so easy to just wake up and then 6 months have gone by and you're older, what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. What's something like throughout your poker career that you used to strongly believe, but you've reversed course, changed your mind, and then what led to that change?
I guess I used to think I could just kind of like outsmart everyone, but I could just kind of figure the game out and go at it alone and kind of just figure out my own strategy. And then as the games got tougher and I realized that I just wasn't winning as much, or I was making a lot of mistakes, and I was like, I need to study and put the time in if I'm going to continue in this profession. So basically, yeah, I guess just not winning will make you think pretty quickly about your stance on.
Well, what's like a stretch that led to you, investing more energy into studying and growth?
Yeah, I guess just like a long-term like streak where you're either losing or not winning much, just kind of
What's long-term mean to you?
It could be like a year, even a year or two, where you're just not doing as well as you expected to do, and you're kind of second guessing yourself and your career path. And I decided I'm going to either take poker seriously or I'm going to do something else, and I decided to take it a little bit more seriously.
Cool, man. Yeah, like a few years is quite a long time of like breaking even and treading water. It's like no matter how even keeled you are, 2 years is frustrating.
No, definitely. I had a lot of ups and downs, but
yeah.
I worked through.
As long as more ups than downs, I think at the end of the day, as long as the graph is trending upwards over the course of your poker journey, that's what ultimately matters. And we'll close out the show by asking if you're working on any projects right now that are near and dear to your heart.
Right now, my fitness, like the fitness that I mentioned earlier, is like my most important thing. I'm really taking it fairly seriously. I'm trying to stick with it. I've been doing a lot of reading a lot and watching a lot of videos on different health things and fitness things. So that's my main goal. Other projects, I'm not like heavily. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, anything like counterintuitive or interesting you've learned on like the health aspect through watching videos and just learning?
Some things like how cardio isn't the best way to for fat loss, if that's your goal. Like weight training is, I've taken my weight training a lot more seriously. It actually helps with everything from metabolism to just muscle burns more calories in general. Like in cardio, if you do cardio, you'll burn more calories in like maybe the 30 minutes that you're doing cardio, but the rest of the day is more impactful if you do resistance training and stuff like that. Just stuff that I'm sure lots of people know, but it was kind of as someone who had never taken it too seriously in my life, it was kind of news to me.
It's actually fun, like lifting weights and getting stronger on a regular basis, and like just sort of like tracking where you were. It's like a competition against yourself, where it's like, you see how much you lifted a week ago or 2 weeks ago or a month ago and how far you've progressed, whether it's in like just reps or the amount of weight that you're able to lift. It's just, that to me is a really fun part of the experience.
Definitely a challenge against yourself, and seeing the results is very rewarding. And I mean, as somebody who has basically lifted seriously for not lift. Like, I'm not trying to become a bodybuilder or anything like that, but like just lifted for health reasons for the first time at like age 35 is it's been an interesting journey for sure.
And to close out, man, if the Chasing Poker Greatness listener, even if you want them to even be able to find you on the World Wide Web, maybe you don't want anybody to find you, where would they look?
There's not that many places, actually. I'm not too active on any social media. I guess I tweet like once a year on at Jesse Yags. But no, I'm not the most active on social media. I'm more of a Twitter lurker, and that's about it.
Yeah, find him at the pickleball courts in Vegas. That's where you're going to find Jesse Yags.
Find me there.
All right, man. Thank you very much for your time, your energy. I enjoyed it as always. Best of luck, and we'll do this again. Hopefully not in 2 years, maybe like a year or so.
This sounds great. Thanks for having me back, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to Chasing Poker Greatness. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on your favorite podcast app. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com to get the newsletter. Join the Greatness Village community, book a coaching session, or dive into the latest data-driven poker courses. Follow the show on Twitter at CPG Podcast.